Here's my honest Sennheiser Momentum 4 versus Apple AirPods Max review in 2025 and which is better. Hey there, Odie from recordingnow.com. We're on a mission to create the most comprehensive database of honest and unbiased headphone and wireless earbud reviews, head-to-head comparisons, and overall rankings to help you make a more informed purchase. Did you know you can save up to $100 or more on either of these headphones by shopping for them in renewed, in like-new condition, or used? Links to where you can save money will be in the video description and in the pinned comment below. Visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see the rest of our headphone content. Alright, so if you're new here, we're going to break down every single category and give an objective score to both of these headphones so you can compare them against each other and to any of the headphones on the website. At the end, we'll tally up an overall score and choose a winner for today. So starting with the first category of comfort, the Apple AirPods Max weighed in at a whopping 387.8 grams on my scale, while the Sennheiser Momentum 4 weighed in at 292.9 grams. So the Momentum 4 is almost 95 grams lighter than the AirPods Max, which the AirPods Max is the heaviest in this class by a long shot. Now, interestingly, when it comes to comfort, the AirPods Max actually does a great job with this mesh suspension headband design to reduce top of head pressure to almost nothing, but the weight is definitely felt in the clamping force and in these ear cups, which are quite heavy. The Momentum 4, on the other hand, doesn't have as much of a plush headband cushioning. It's kind of tough and it's a rubber material as opposed to leather, so the top of head pressure is actually a little bit stronger with the Momentum 4, and I do think my ears get a little bit warm with the Momentum 4, and it does have actually a little bit of clamping force from the factory, but after owning this pair for almost 2 years now, they've loosened up quite nicely. So for comfort, I'm actually giving both of these headphones a 4 out of 5. Once you get used to wearing them, I actually find both of them fairly comfy to where you can wear them for a couple hours, but they're just not as comfy as the best in this class, like the Bose QC Ultra and the Sonos Ace. Alright, so moving on to features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance, which will combine into a single score. Starting with your features, these are going to have most of your modern features. The one standout is going to be the AirPods Max having that spatial audio with Dolby Atmos support. Dolby Atmos is a pretty nifty feature if you listen to tracks that do support the Dolby Atmos, or you watch movies or media that has the Dolby Atmos mix. It does add more 3D soundstage and a speaker-like effect to these headphones, and it's a better spatial audio implementation than Sony and Bose that have their own versions that don't actually use the official Dolby Atmos license. Now, showing you the hardshell case that the Sennheiser Momentum 4 comes with, and many people by now probably know about the notorious smart case, which I'm not a fan of. Basically, neither of these headphones fold like the Bose Quiet Comfort series, so they take up a little bit of room. Okay, so moving on to build quality, the AirPods Max is clearly the more premium headphone from a materials and just from a look and feel standpoint. These feel very solid. They use stainless steel in the hinges and aluminum for the ear cups, which gives it that distinct look. The Momentum 4, on the other hand, feels a lot cheaper. It's mostly plastic here on the hinges and on the ear cup exterior, and you have this fabric material here. I will say I'm not really a fan of the AirPods Max earpad cushions, which is this fabric material as opposed to leather, although the leather on the Sennheiser Momentum 4 could be a little more plush, and again, my ears do get a little bit warm here compared to something like the cooling memory foam pads of the Sonos Ace. Now, for battery life, this is no contest with the Momentum 4 having a class-leading 60 hours compared to just 20 hours of the Apple AirPods Max, but I want to add a caveat here that the AirPods Max, due to not having a true off mode, basically when you're not wearing them and they're inactive for some time, or you put them into the smart case, they're supposed to go into this low power state, so they're technically always on, and that's going to drain your battery faster. And in my experience, even if the AirPods Max has 20 hours of battery life, it doesn't feel that way versus these other headphones, which you can actually turn off to ensure that you're not draining any battery overnight. I think Apple made some firmware updates that have improved this over the years, but I still don't feel confident about the battery life for the AirPods Max unless I was able to charge them frequently. Now, moving on to the noise canceling performance. So both of these headphones, I believe, are in a tier below the Bose QC Ultra and the Sony XM5 and the Sonos Ace. Those are the three that I think are the best in the class right now. That said, I actually find the noise canceling to be about on par with each other. I think both of these are good enough to bring onto flights and be able to enjoy movies and music, no problem. So when people talk badly about the Momentum 4's active noise canceling, which a commenter on my YouTube video actually said that they've recently improved with the new smartphone app, I have to say I don't really have any issues with the Momentum 4 noise canceling. Could it be better? Yes, but it gets the job done. Now, I actually didn't find the AirPods Max noise canceling to be as good as some people online say. I think it's because of the physical seal is not as good due to having this rectangular ear cup shape and also not having these really form-fitting ear pad cushions. I think this has less of a stronger physical seal, but overall, these do work for flights. They are perfectly fine. So for this category, I'm giving both headphones a 4.5 out of 5. I think they just miss out on being perfect due to not having that elite active noise canceling. All right, so moving on to sound quality, and an interesting note here is that the AirPods Max is going to be tested stock because it doesn't have a customizable EQ. The Sennheiser Momentum 4, on the other hand, has actually been improved in the sound quality since I originally tested them due to developing my own custom EQ and also testing out the sound personalization feature inside of the Sennheiser's smartphone app. That has improved the sound quality slightly, and I'm going to be comparing the EQ'd or the sound personalization version of the Momentum 4 versus the stock AirPods Max. Although I will say briefly that the stock Sennheiser Momentum 4 sounds great. It's going to be a very consumer-friendly sound signature. It's a little bit unbalanced and a little bit too much bass, especially when you compare it to the pretty well-balanced AirPods Max. But that said, most consumers would enjoy the Momentum 4 without any EQ right out of the box, including myself. All right, so to dive into this comparison, basically both of these headphones sound very good for being Bluetooth wireless, comfy, active noise canceling headphones. When comparing these headphones stock, I slightly prefer the Apple AirPods Max, which I think just has a more balanced and pleasing stock tuning and sound profile. It does have a present sub bass and upper bass, but it's not as overpowering and boomy as the Momentum 4 right out of the box. The AirPods Max pushes forward some really nice detail in the treble without being too sibilant, and I find that the AirPods Max has just a little bit more clarity and resolution. Now, moving on to the strengths of the Momentum 4, and now we're going to talk about the EQ'd version, which is now more balanced out, and that's enough to put it ahead slightly of the Apple AirPods Max. So that bass is a strength of the Momentum 4, which is still a little bit boomy, but adding EQ is able to make that a little bit more controlled. What I like about the Momentum 4 is it has a really nice sub bass extension, and it also has more slam compared to the AirPods Max. Now, I do think the AirPods Max has a cleaner bass response overall, which is flattering, but if you're looking for that consumer-friendly sound signature, the Momentum 4 is going to win here. And when you throw in that EQ, I feel that it fixes the flaws of being a little bit too consumer-friendly sound and a little bit too hyped. Adding in that EQ is able to bring the vocals more forward, and it has less boxiness, which basically makes these even more satisfying to listen to for my taste. After applying the EQ to the Momentum 4 to balance it out, I do think that I am hearing more depth and soundstage compared to the AirPods Max, but it's really close. So overall, I'm giving the Apple AirPods Max an 8.6 out of 10, and the Sennheiser Momentum 4 with EQ now gets boosted up to an 8.7 out of 10, narrowly beating out the AirPods Max. Alright, so moving on to value, the AirPods Max is notorious for its $549 USD price tag retail, whereas the Sennheiser Momentum 4 can be found market price brand new for less than $300 these days. So easily the Momentum 4 is going to be the better dollar value here. It's not even a question, but the Apple AirPods Max these days, sometimes you can find it for $500, maybe $480, which helps it out. And in the defense of the AirPods Max, you are getting something that you're not getting with these other headphones in the class, which is that Apple ecosystem connectivity. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, that could be a feature that means a lot to you if you've had issues with connection or multi-point connection in the past, which some of these headphones do have issues. Me personally, I've actually never really had much of an issue with the Momentum 4 when it comes to connection. I've updated the firmware several times, and they work just fine with Apple devices in my experience, but you're also getting the Dolby Atmos support. You're getting the more premium build quality and materials of the AirPods Max, and stock for stock, I do slightly prefer the sound of the AirPods Max, but overall for value, there's just no way to get around that $500 price tag. So the AirPods Max receives a 3.5 out of 5, whereas the Momentum 4, one of the best values in the class, receives a 4.5 out of 5. Okay, so to tally up the overall score, the AirPods Max receives an 8.2 out of 10, and the Sennheiser Momentum 4 receives an 8.7 out of 10. So my overall thoughts between these two headphones, I do think that both of them are pretty compelling packages, especially when it comes to sound quality. These are going to be in the upper range of this class. I do enjoy listening to both of these headphones, and they're almost more just different flavors as opposed to one just being outright better than the other. But I will say the recent edge is given to the Momentum 4 thanks to EQ, which is something that the AirPods Max can't do. Luckily, it has very good stock sound profile that's pleasing, and it's a good all-arounder, but honestly that EQ just brings it a little bit further ahead for me because I'm able to get this closer to my tastes. Now if I actually had to pick one, I would pick the Momentum 4, not just because of the sound quality, but I think that overall as a package and the dollar value, you just can't go wrong with the Momentum 4. Now if you enjoyed this comparison and found it useful, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below if you have any questions at all about either of these headphones or any of the headphones on the website. If you need help making a decision, I do my best to read all the comments and get back to everyone. And if you love listening to music and audio as much as we do, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we have a ton more premium headphone models coming on the way and a lot more budget models as well. Again, there's links to where you can save up to $100 or more on either of these headphones in the video description and in the pinned comment below. Visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see the rest of our headphone content. We have a ton more comparisons as well on the website, including those overall rankings, so you can see where everything stands. Thanks for watching and happy listening.